Andy, I think we already see with all of that, right? So there's AI in so many different lines of business that we have, right? So there's stuff that's happening in security. There's stuff that's happening collab. Digital signage is a huge AI space, right? So there's all these different AI spaces. What are your thoughts kind of going into the workshop with all these different options available?
As with a lot of other things, it's a hot term right now, in which case we've got to be a little bit critical from the standpoint of, okay, what are we getting out of it? So let's not get caught up in the AI or label at this point, and we could go off on a tangent to what that means and whether we're talking about building models and using models. But really, it's to the point now where it's almost just another technology. So it's a hot technology, but it's a way to do things. It's another tool in the toolbox. It gives us another way to get to a desirable outcome. So, I think the focus isn't so much on the technology, or it doesn't, or needs to not be so much on the technology. So technology for technology's sake is cool. Okay. And that's kind of the world we live in. But we really need to look at what the outcomes are going to be. So how is it giving us a benefit? How does this version, which quote has AI, give me something that a previous version or a competitor's product doesn't? Okay. So, if we're buying AI to buy AI, I don't want to say we're wasting our money. Okay, but we could make wiser decisions. So, let's look at what am I getting out of having those kind of technologies, because some of this stuff, depending on what we're doing, it may just be kind of evolutionary. So we might be seeing, AI capabilities or benefits in products as part of their evolution. Or it might be net new. So I might be buying something specifically because of these capabilities. And so I really need to understand what's my benefit. What am I getting out of it?
All right. So speaking of buying something, let's bring in Jimmy. So Jimmy, welcome. Why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself and the EBG team overall?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for the invite, Mike and Andrew. Happy to be a part of this conversation. So I'm the Chief Technology Evangelist for the Emerging Business Group here at Ingram Micro. Think of it as a field CTO type of role. And I'm responsible for creating and developing our solutions and how we go to market, and of course, evangelizing those solutions. And that's the one thing that we're doing differently from years past as a part of this team. We used to go to market with specific vendors, and we decided to pivot away from that and to focus on solutions. Like, as an example, generative AI as a solution and tool set. Managed security services is another type of solution that we've developed and we're executing upon. The Emerging Business Group has been around for 10 years in one form or fashion. The team was created for one simple reason. We wanted to cultivate, nurture, and develop these relationships with these young, high-growth startup companies. So we've worked with the likes of Veeam and Nimble Storage, and we helped incubate those businesses within Ingram Micro. And as they grow and scale, they graduate out of the team into one of our mature vendor lines. And so that's a little bit about myself and my role and what we do here from a Emerging Business Group standpoint.
One of the questions would be, what are you seeing out there? I mean, how much is, kind of where I started with my introduction, is just new capabilities in existing products versus really net new? Is there really things that are out there now that just didn't exist before we started to get into some of these AI technologies?
Yeah, it's a great question, Andy. So a couple different thoughts or school of thought. Number one, we started working with a new AI vendor just this quarter called Aisera, and it's spelled AISERA. What they bring to the table is generative AI for the enterprise. And they have a number of use cases, 5 to be exact, but the one that I can relate to, and I think most of our customers will be able to relate to, is they've developed a large language model for the IT help desk. So they understand all the types of service requests that are going to come into the IT help desk. And they built a rich machine model to help our customers automate that process. So let's say our MSP clients, being able to provide self-service and a chat bot to fulfill all of the service requests. And the one example that I can relate to the most and the easiest is password resets. You know, there are so many password resets that occur. What you can do using AI and automation is you can do that in a self-service model. So let's say an employee needs to reset their machine or their system, let's say Saturday night at 10 o'clock. Well, they're not going to be able to get help from the help desk. But if you have Aisera, you have this chatbot that you can go to and say, hey, I need to reset my password. Can you help me? And that chat service and robot's going to be able to reset the password. So what normally is done by human beings, you can move to a self-service model and think about the cost savings that you would be able to accrue. Think about the responsiveness of your services. Think about the employee satisfaction. I can go and get whatever I need accomplished at any point in time. I don't have to call anybody. And that's nirvana for a lot of end users.
And that's probably a good example because, I mean, there have been password reset portals for a lot of vendors out there. There's ways to do it. But in, you know, a good example with a help desk, people may not necessarily understand the problem. And, you know, if you've dealt with, you know, traditional chatbots, which is pretty much scripted response, or, you know, the dreaded phone menus, you know, at some point I need to talk to a person because it doesn't know what I'm trying to ask. And really what you're talking about from a AI capability standpoint is some of that understanding. So again, whether it's a understanding what my response is or providing a response that's relevant to what I'm talking about to help me help get a better understanding of the problem that I have that I need solved.
And the beautiful thing with Aisera is they have taught their model, you know, over the last 3 to 5 years. These are all the service requests that you're going to see, and train the model to understand the meaning, the text, what's implied when somebody is coming with a service request. And they continue to improve the model. It's a knowledge base, right? There's going to be new service requests maybe the machine hasn't seen before, and you want to be able to teach the machine how to handle this new service request. There are going to be cases where you need to talk to a real human being, but with Aisera, when they bring the capabilities for IT help desk, 80% of the service request can be automated and handled in a self-service manner. Just think about the cost savings there. That's immense. But to your point, you have to teach the machine. And that's where the training and building the machine model comes into play. It's not overnight. And what they do with net new clients is they'll do an AI assessment and they'll run the machine and the robot for 30 days. In that 30-day period, you're training the machine. Any new service requests that they perhaps hadn't seen in the past or with other clients, well, now they understand. The machine understands that. And so it becomes immensely invaluable the instant that they purchase the product and the service.
Oh, that's really one of the things that we're starting to see is I don't know what generation that we really need to be talking about from an AI product standpoint, but the idea of specifically targeted language models. So that's one of the things that we're seeing, like in the coding assistant tool type space. This is another great example because, you know, there are going to be kind of those unique things about your organization, whether it's certain applications, those kind of things will obviously would have to be understood. And one of the other things, you know, I've had some background working with people in the healthcare space. And one of the things that we definitely see there is I always talk about it. if you really want to get in the healthcare space, you want to hire a doctor or a nurse because you need a translator. And I mean that quite literally, because a lot of the words might mean something different in this context. So that's one of those things where, an off-the-shelf model might be good, but unless you can get that training and retraining to really customize for the specific use case, the return on investment just isn't really the same, because you don't have that personalized experience.
I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a number of different large language models that Aisera has developed. You mentioned healthcare. That's a great example of where you're going to have to build a custom, unique large language model, because the terminology, the use cases in healthcare is going to be very unique to healthcare, right? The same thing with Aisera. And the one thing I didn't mention is they are leveraging ChatGPT. And that's their underlying technology that they're using to feed the computer and build this large language model. And when you look at the use cases, they have IT, the IT help desk. They have one for the HR help desk. They have one for customer support. They have one for AI operations. And then they have one for security. So they have built literally 5 different large language models that is specific to certain job functions. And I could foresee a future that's probably going to start to develop this year, and it is this year starting to take off. But you're going to be able to develop these models for every industry, every job function, right? And think about the number of models that we're going to be able to create and then use from an economic perspective. That the ramifications is just amazing to me. And I've been in the IT space for 25 years. I've never seen anything as transformative as I've seen with generative AI. And this is like the first inning of generative AI. Imagine what we're going to be able to do in 3 to 5 years with generative AI. It's going to be so groundbreaking and transformative, and the implications are broad and significant.
All right. Well, so let's just kind of close this out with a, total addressable market. Okay. Obviously, at the very, very high end, you're going to have organizations that are going to want to be 100% hands-on. They own everything, et cetera, et cetera. Kind of where's the sweet spot for somebody like an Aisera? Where do they fit well, and where do you see some of the opportunities that our partners might have with these kind of technologies?
Yeah, the one that is the most practical for our customers is the IT help desk capability, right? When you look at our customer base, I would say 90% of our customers have made the pivot away from reselling technology to being a managed service provider. So as a part of being an MSP, you're providing that help desk capability. And so that specific use case around the IT help desk is the one that I see the most potential here in the short term. And that, happens to be where a lot of Aisera's customers have started. They've started with the IT help desk. But then once you get that put in place, you can go after other use cases like the ones I mentioned earlier. But that's the one that's going to be most practical in the short term, Andy.
Thank you very much for your time, Jimmy. It's always great getting some insights from kind of the new spaces. I know you work with a lot of unique vendors. By the way, technology evangelist has always been one of those dream titles I've looked for. I guess I could argue I may not have that title, but that's pretty much my job anyway. But I think it's a great that Ingram has put some dedicated resources to really both helping vendors understand what partners are looking for, because I know that EBG, typically a lot of that is either net new companies, so true startup kind of things, or new to the channel, and really helping those vendors understand what partners are looking for and what benefits those partners can get from some of these new and emerging technologies. So again, it's always great from hearing from you and the rest of your team. And again, thanks for your insights today.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. And one thing I want to leave the audience with to whet their appetite is we spoke about Aisera very specifically, but 60% of our portfolio are security companies. And there's a whole different type of conversation around security and how AI is impacting security. Just to whet your appetite, most of our customers are looking at AI from a competitive and defensive standpoint. And then there's also the ability to bake in AI from an offensive standpoint. So AI is being used by the good guys and the bad guys. And that's a whole different type of conversation.
Oh, that may sound like a foreshadowing that we might hear from you or somebody on your team for our next episode, which is going to be around security. So thanks very much, Jimmy.
Thank you guys for having me.